can I just say one thing firstly? I love the name Eat Sleep Boxing Repeat.
Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted to be joined by Niall. We were in preview mode for the British and Commonwealth middleweight title fight happening on Friday night at the famous Your Call between Kieron Conway and George Liddard. A great fight. Looking forward to diving into it with you now. But before we do, guys, if you're watching this video and you're not doing so already, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. It means a lot to us. We've got all of your boxing needs up and under one roof, so please do check out the channel, as well as letting us know in the comments your thoughts on what we're about to discuss. Dropping a like on the video and also following us on social media if you can. But yes, Niall, we're here for Conway Liddard. As I mentioned, British and Commonwealth middleweight titles on the line. We're going to discuss a few, I suppose, topics of conversation surrounding maybe fighters in this main event. But first and foremost, after you tell me how you are, please do give me your thoughts and a prediction for Conway Liddard.
Yeah, I'm all good. Thanks for having me on as always. But yeah, like we were just touching there, kind of off camera, saying, can't wait for this fight. This is a really exciting domestic clash. Good step up for Liddard. And yeah, your call, the perfect setting for this fight. I think, to be honest with you, I think it was originally supposed to be on the Alan Makmadov card, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm actually happier now that it's got a headline spot at your call. Yeah, can't wait for it. Of course, you think like on paper, Liddard, he's never faced anyone like Conway, obviously, and he's never been in with the level of opposition that Kieron Conway has been in with either. But I'm just such a big fan of George Liddard, I really am. It could be a case of maybe gassing him up too much. Maybe if I'm getting a bit carried away with him, and if Kieran Conway goes on to beat him, this will be getting clipped up, and it'll be used to embarrass me. But I'm going for a George Liddard win. I just think he gets it done. I think his ceiling is very high. I think I love his style. I love how quick he is. I love how efficient he is. He can punch. I think he's a really exciting fighter to watch. And I think this is a case of a good fighter in Kieran Conway against somebody who's going to be a very good fighter in George Liddard. So I'm going for Liddard to get it done. I'll go with a points win, but I'll caveat that with saying that he'll drop Conway on the way to a points win. But yeah, I cannot wait for this one. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, nice one, mate. That was lovely analysis there. And I'll start by saying I agree with your method of victory. I think George Liddard wins, and I think he wins on points. Um, but I think this is a great test. I mean, I'm going to say, like, Conway's seasoned at this level, despite only actually being 29, which surprised me. It feels like Kieran Conway's been around for a long time. He's been in there with a whole host of fighters. Was he kind of remember the one of the first times I really remember taking notice of him was the draw with Ted Cheeseman, and then he's since then beaten the likes of Linus Udofia, Ryan Kelly, George Jerome Warburton, sorry. Um, yeah, and then you look at Liddard, of course. Yes, he did knock out Sutton last time, but is it Derek Azazi potentially the best name on his resume? But he's only 23. Big, it seems like a reasonably. I wouldn't say he's a big puncher, Jordan Liddard, but I would say he's precise and just kind of his skill set leads to knockouts. If you get what I'm saying. Um, but yeah, I think this is an intriguing one. Conway a little bit bigger, so it'll be interesting to see when they actually get in the ring to see just how much bigger he is. At 23, George Liddard probably hasn't even fully developed into a full blown middleweight. He's not the biggest, but yeah, I think he's got the skills to pay the bills, mate. And I do agree with what you've said there about, um, yeah, it's going to be it's a tough test. I think it's the right fight at the right time. I think this is really good matchmaking. I will say that I don't think it's going to be easy. I think Kieran Conway will win rounds. I think it'll be one of those where maybe going for an 8-4 Liddard or something along those lines on the cards. So I think it'll be competitive, but I do see Liddard getting his hand raised after 12 competitive rounds. And yeah, it's a really good fight, a really good top of the bill on a Friday night at your call. We all love those, especially British title fights. They never fail to deliver, do they? So yeah, fingers crossed this lives up to it as well. But yeah, you kind of touched on there now. You actually mentioned that you feel that Conway's a good fighter, but Liddard's ceiling is higher. Tell me exactly what you mean by that. What do you actually see Liddard's ceiling being?
Again, like as I say, I could kind of be in danger of sounding like I'm getting carried away here, but I'm just such a big fan. Like I do think He is above British level, and I think he will prove it against Kieron Conway. He's only young, he has youth on his side. He is charismatic, he has the look, he has the style. And I think if matched correctly, I think he could be at the very least challenging for world titles. I know I'd love to see him go the kind of route after this of European title, hopefully next, and then world titles after that. But yeah, I think he has the time, if plotted correctly, to be a future kind of world champion. I really do. Yeah, as I say, this could come back to bite me. This could get clipped up no end and come back to haunt me if he gets, derailed. But yeah, I think he's a world champion and waiting. You look at the middleweight division now. Of course, there's the King, there's Janabek, Adame's good fighters. How much longer they're going to kind of be around at 160, who knows? And you've got Lara, who's, seems to be right at the exit door. He's 42, 43 maybe now. So once those guys kind of move on, they're leaving a hole that George Liddard could definitely fill. But yeah, it won't be for another while yet, but I do think that's his ceiling is definitely world level, absolutely.
Interesting, interesting. Well, I think a win over Kieran Conway and looking good doing so. If he was able to become the first man to stop Kieran Conway, that would be a statement, because I feel like George Liddard's still relatively unknown, to be honest, especially to the casual. So I think he needs a few more acid tests like this, and as you said, at that European British level, which I think he has at that middleweight division. Ignore European for a second. You look at the middleweight division, and there's so many British fighters that you could put him in against. You could almost have his next 10 fights all against like really good British, like between British and European level fighters. And like there's be some tough tests in there. But yeah, I think you're right. I think George Liddell he's still very young, isn't he? So I still think the best is gonna be still gonna be five, he's probably not gonna hit his peak for another 5, 6, 7 years. So yeah, I think the world's his oyster, really. Gun to my head, am I saying he becomes world champion? I can't answer that right now. But I could definitely see him fight for a world title in years to come. But again, it does depend on the scene. Just before we round off, mate, I yeah, I mentioned a few British middleweights. And I think there's so many. I'm literally just going to name a few here, and I want you to tell me who wins if they were to fight next. So the big point being next. So we'll start off by saying Aston Brown, who we saw obviously winning on that Daniel Collins Lorente undercard there recently.
Yeah, Aston Brown did look very good on Saturday night, but I'm going for Liddard. I just think he is a level or two above Aston Brown. And Brown is coming off, he's had kind of periods out with personal issues and things like that. But be interesting to see. He's turned into a real puncher, Aston Brown. So if he checks the chin of Liddard, it could be interesting. But yeah, Liddard too quick, too sharp for Brown, in my opinion.
There's a few other names like special mentions to the likes of Shaquille Thompson, Brad Pauls, Nathan Heaney and stuff. But I'll ask you about two more. Next one, Denzel Bentley.
This is the one for me. This is the fight that I'd love to see next. You threw a few of these names at me earlier in terms of, when we were preparing for this, and I think it's the perfect fight. As I say, step up to European level, European titles on the line. I believe Bentley is still the European champion, if I remember correctly. But yeah, Bentley has looked. It kind of people were writing his obituary against, when he lost to Nathan Heaney, but then he's bounced back. He's looked very good since that. I'm gonna have to edge Liddard if it happened. Maybe I'm being a bit biased because I'm a George Liddard fan, but I would love to see that fight. I really would.
And last but by no means least, my man, Tyler Denny.
Yeah, this is another good fight. If it wasn't Denzel Bentley, I think this would be my next option. I think stylistically, Tyler Denny has the capabilities of causing George Liddard problems. I'll edge Liddard though. I know that one might offend you a bit more than the other shouts with it being your boy Tyler Denny, but yeah, again, very good fight. And yeah, just kind of quickly before we wrap up the other names you mentioned. Nathan Heaney, I think George Liddard would knock out Nathan Heaney to be honest, but I wouldn't be against seeing that, as a fight for Liddard if the other names were were not to materialise. But yeah, there is fascinating fights. These names that we outlined, as you said, that kind of British between British and European level. So many interesting middleweight matchups there.
Yeah, for sure, mate. And yeah, hopefully we get to see George Liddard in these big domestic clashes before he makes that next step, because there's certainly no rush. But he, of course, has to get through Kieron Conway first, which won't be easy. So yeah, that was our preview, guys. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on this fight and the fights we discussed. Where do you see George Liddard ceiling? How do you think he fares against those other names that we mentioned? And yeah, as I said at the top of the video, please as well, do subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got all of your boxing needs up and under one roof, so do check it out. Niall, pleasure as always, mate, and I'll speak to you again very soon.
Cheers. Take care.